This is great news.
What?
We are live.
Oh, okay, good. I was like, what's happening? Because on my
Right.
end, I just saw an error. So if you say we're live, it looks like we're live in the room. I think we're
Yes,
live. Cool.
yes, yes.
Well, welcome
I'm gonna,
everybody. March 26th, 2025. Who knew we're like a third through this year already. So
holy smokes, that's crazy.
yeah. And with us
Well,
today, we have kicking this off, we have Ellen Hinkle, and she is on our Ellen, are you on the National Advisory Board this year? Okay,
Yeah,
not the CAB, but the NAB.
the nap. Yep.
Want to make sure with those acronyms being so close, we want to make sure we get the correct one. So we have Ellen with us. She's going to help kind of kick things off with us, and then we'll talk about her magazine article. And of course, as always, we have Alex with us. So Alex is just looking dapper as ever. And
oh, thank you.
what's
I
what's been
get
going
dressed
on in
up
your world,
twice a
Alex?
month.
What's that?
I get dressed up twice a month for each social hour.
For each lesson.
Yes, I'm
That's
just in my pajamas usually.
Yeah, that's the right amount of times to get dressed up for work now. So
Right.
yeah, what about you, Ellen? Do you work primarily remote or
I'm 100% remote. So
so you're part of the pajama crew then?
I'm not because if I'm in my pajamas, I don't feel productive. So I have to get up and get myself ready. And, I might be jeans on the bottom, comfortable on the bottom, but,
There you go.
I look presentable at least because I never know when I'm going to get a Zoom call. So
Ooh, yeah, that's true too.
on top of
Yep.
it. So
And what's that adage? Look the way you feel, something like
yeah,
that, or
that's
if you want to
very
feel a certain way, dress a certain way. So
true.
maybe I should stop wearing pajamas then, and I won't feel like Saturday morning cartoons all the
There you
time. So I don't know.
Well, I'm learning a lot here, so maybe I'll step up my game by following Ellen's example.
go.
Yeah,
There you go.
exactly.
Yep.
Yes,
It's true though. It does make you feel a different way. You carry yourself differently just depending on what you're wearing.
Yep.
Even little things, little articles of clothing, they change, kind of how we show up a little bit. It's
Yes,
interesting. So,
absolutely. So
yeah. So we've got some big things coming up around the corner. The big elephant in the room is HealthCon. So
that's two comments about that already.
yeah, cool.
Adriana, I hope I said your name right, Anderson. She's going to be there from the emergencies in the Emerging Leaders Program, or was in there. So excited to meet her.
Nice.
yeah,
An emerging leaders program. Cool.
yes, that's the committee I'm on for the NAB. So we're excited to meet all those emerging leaders. Several of them are going to be at HealthCon. So, yep, very very exciting times for them. So and us to get to meet them and help them become our emerging leaders. So
Adriana, make sure you say hi to Dave, Ellen, and myself in person. We would love to see your face and shake your hand.
Definitely come say hi. We're always approachable. So, Ellen, tell us a little bit about that Emerging Leaders program. It's somewhat new, right? And you've been involved for how long, or is this just new as part of your role with the NAB?
this is new for me with the NAB, but the program started last year. So they are just finishing up the first cohort of, actually, I think they're done now. They finished the first cohort. So at HealthCon, there will be a little invitation only recognition breakfast for those folks who are graduating from the first ever emerging leader program. And then we have selected the 40 participants who will be in the next cohort, which will start in May. Um, and basically, I think it's 10 sessions over the course of from May to April of 2026, where each month we have different speakers that will hold sessions with the emerging leaders just to help give them the tools to help them get to that next level within their careers. Give them professionalism and leadership skills along the way. Um, so very exciting. And again, I'm new to the program, so I probably don't have all the important details, but
Okay. Yeah,
but
it's a fairly new program anyway, so and you're
and
jumping
it's
on as the new person to the new program, but
yeah, and it's free, which is an amazing benefit for our members.
Yeah. So you said it runs about a year long, and every month there's a presentation or a speaker or something like that, right? And those are all virtual, right?
Yes, yep. And there there's homework assignments and things like that. So it's really it's a robust course. There's a curriculum to go along with it, and each month, a different topic is presented by the instructor and with assignments to go along with it. So
Nice. That's awesome. And if somebody is interested in participating in this program, is there a big wait list? Do you know anything like that?
So there is an application process that you have to go through. This past year, I'm not sure exactly when they put the notice out that they were accepting applications, but I know like the deadline was beginning of March that they had to have those applications in. And it requires, the application and then 2 letters of reference. And then we go through all the applicants and decide, who our 40 participants are going to be. So based on experience and involvement in the AAPC, attending chapter meetings, plus the recommendations. So just really folks that really display that desire and passion for our industry, the AAPC, and for those goals of leadership in their future. So
That's awesome. Yeah. And it's a small group, 40 only that you select. So Adriana in the comments, who is part of that program, congratulations for making it into the program, making the cut. Sounds like it's not an easy selection process either. You need letters of recommendation, and you said you look at their overall involvement in the industry and with the AAPC. So there seems like there's a lot of consideration that goes into it. So if you make the program like Adriana, congratulations. So
I
super
remember a few webcasts ago, Dave, we had someone on here who when she was talking about her experience in the Emerging Leaders Program, her employer posted in the comments, we promoted this person. I can't remember who it was right off the top of my head, but they said we promoted this person specifically because he had that experience in the Emerging Leaders Program. I thought that was an awesome testimonial.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's exactly what we hope that will come from the program. We want the participants to have those skill sets that they need to get to that next level. So, yep, awesome, awesome, awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like the program is doing what it was designed to do. So
Yep.
that's great.
I want to
So
go to that reception.
what's that?
I want to go to that reception, Ellen. Dave,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I'll with Rita and find out how we can arrange
Okay.
that for you.
Maybe I can pull Dave away from his stuff too. We'll see. We'll see,
Yeah,
but that'll be fun.
absolutely.
That would be so fun. Are you doing that one virtually too, the reception?
We are trying to get that set up to be able to do it virtually as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, looking forward to it, and for that program to continue to evolve and grow, and you're gonna know a lot about it real soon as you are more and more involved. I want to talk a little bit about HealthCon before we jump into your magazine article. We'll get there, but
Oh,
My magazine
Ellen's
article.
not. We got Jackie Bloink with
oh,
the
I'm
magazine
sorry.
article.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. Jackie's article. I thought you had an article too, Ellen.
Nope, I don't this time. Someday I'll have one in the.
Oh,
I've got talk.
There is a surprise with that. Well, I'll just say, Dave, because we're kind of we didn't talk about this before, but we have another we have 2 magazine guests. One has not shown up yet. I'm hoping that they come, but after we might just be able to take as much time with Jackie as we need, and then we can grill Ellen on her career and really dig in, peel back the layers of who she is if we need to.
but so I mean, are we wanting to do that now? Should we transition into
Well, Jackie's expecting to come on about now.
let's do it.
Okay.
Cool. I guess I got the timing mixed up a little bit on that. So let's bring Jackie in. And Ellen, you're going to be at HealthCon, right?
Yes, I can't wait.
Right. And what is your involvement going to be like there at HealthCon? They got you volunteering for a few different things, or?
Yeah, so I'll be moderating some of the rooms. We're doing a big NAB and CAB collaboration presentation that any members out there really should try and get into that session. It's on Sunday, I think at noon, but it's unlocking the magic of all your member benefits. So, there's a lot of benefits out there for members that people just aren't aware of. And a lot of them are free. So we really want to, show people what opportunities there are for them as members. So, and it'll have a fun magical theme, and there'll be lots of cool stuff going on. So everybody should make sure they get into that one.
Well, looking forward to it. Well, awesome. Jacqueline, welcome.
Thank you.
Is this your first time joining us for Social Hour, or have you been on before?
Not for Social Hour. I've been a presenter and published with AAPC, but not in Social Hour.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, welcome to Social Hour. We know that you've been involved with AAPC for quite a while. Like you said, you've been published. Do you want to give us maybe a little bit of background about yourself and kind of how you got started in the industry, and then maybe how you got involved with AAPC?
Definitely. So I've been in healthcare for about 31 years. Started as actually a physician's wife who did all the coding and the billing and the contract negotiations in rural Colorado. From there, I started the first community college medical coding and billing program in Southwest Colorado. At that point, I got my CPCI so that I could teach those students in rural Colorado to be coders. After that, I was a consultant for hospitals, physician groups as large as like 64 sites and 160 providers within one entity, university, hospital settings, hospital, multi-hospital settings, etc. Throughout that time, I had my CPC, my CPCI, and then assisted AAPC with their testing or their test for their compliance exam, because I am certified in healthcare compliance with HCCA. I'm a certified fraud examiner. I'm medical reimbursement specialist, and I hold the Registered Health Information Management Administrator called RIA with AHIMA.
Okay, wow. That's quite the background and list of credentials that you likely have attached to your name. So that's awesome. And you said that you helped develop, was it the compliance exam with
Yeah,
AAPC? Really?
right.
Okay.
So Catherine Abel asked me to kind of review some of the chapters and come up with some of the exam questions. And then I actually sat for the exam cold turkey without any resources, just to see how my test questions were. And anyway, so I don't hold that. I had held that credential for a while, but then let that one go since I am certified in healthcare compliance with the Healthcare Compliance Association.
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome that you were involved with creating those test questions and and you got to sit for it. How did you do? I mean, did they have you take the entire exam, or did you just take a small?
No, I went in as just a student.
Okay.
I wanted to do it without any references to see how the questions were. It was a tough exam.
Yeah.
I think, I passed it, but it was a challenging exam. So I think it's a good exam because compliance in our industry is what protects our physicians and our entities. It's the bubble wrap around the entity. So you have to know compliance in order to protect your providers.
Absolutely.
So, in this month's article, the March AAPC, the magazine article, you have written an article titled Putting a Value on Medical Liens. Now, I'm familiar with liens on houses or tax liens. Tell us what's a medical lien.
That goes to my profession now. So with all those different backgrounds that I've held in provider coding, hospital coding, as a compliance director, etc., led me to be a compliance and what's called an expert witness. And that's why I do full time now. I'm an expert witness. Most of my cases are in personal injury. And every time you drive down a highway, you probably see one of those signs that says, if you've been in a car accident or a motorcycle accident, reach
Yeah,
out
Sweet
to
James.
Sweet
Sweet
James.
James. I see him
Sweet
everywhere.
James. I keep wondering if that's really his first name, Sweet, you know?
Yeah, sweet.
Anyway, so there's personal injury cases every day, all day. And I work for both sides. I work for defense, which is the insurance carrier, or like say Ralph's or Kroger's or Costco or Home Depot, Uber. Those could be my clients, or my clients could be the person that's injured that actually had an accident. So I'm valued, which is unique for experts, because some experts are only defense, some experts are only plaintiff. I work for both sides. Both sides value me. So when an attorney reaches out to me, my sole purpose is to say, were the bills reasonable that was charged? Now, I'm not opining, and we use the word opine instead of opinion or what have you. So I'm opining on the reasonable value of medical services, not the service that was medically necessary. That's a clinician. I look at the reasonable value or the values charged. And let's say $1 million was charged for a case. I look at those CPT codes or those DRG codes, and I have different resources that I use that will tell me what is the median for that CPT code, all the way up to an 80th percentile, which I say is reasonable for services. Because when you're in an accident, you might not use your insurance, and it's going to be billed on what's called a lien, which means that's a promise to pay later. So let's say that you've had about $1 million of services on a lien, and that's going to be paid after the court settlement. Experts like myself are brought in to say, was it really $1 million that was billed, or what do other providers bill for similar services in similar geographical areas? And I might come up with 500,000, and I need to be able to justify that. So a lien is, for the better term, is a promise to pay later.
To pay later. Cool. So that can apply obviously to across lots of different industries. And for you, it's more on the, is it more, I guess I'm thinking more traumatic type of injury. I guess that's what you're saying, right? Personal injury only, or
It's personal injury, so it could be office visits. It could be for a spine fusion. It could be for rehab, like physical.
Uh-oh.
froze up for just a sec.
Feedback.
Hey, Jacqueline, I think you froze up for just a second. If you can hear us, can you just maybe repeat the last sentence that you said?
Sure. So for future care, I'm also hired to give the value of future care using the same set of criteria.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
I have a question for Jackie.
Mhm.
Jackie, I was reading in your article, you mentioned this as you were talking about medical liens, but you say medical coding experts must assign a reasonable value to the healthcare services rendered. There are many different types of medical coders or different types of experience. What makes someone an expert? What makes a medical coder an expert at being able to assign the reasonable value?
Sure. So courts in different states have different criteria that will state whether somebody can be called an expert. One of the criteria is, have you have work experience in that area? Like, have you been an actual coder in the industry? Do you hold credentials? Do you have any educational background? Are you published or do you present? All of those items will lend itself to whether you're an expert or challenged, because you got to remember, this is kind of like a chess game. So in court, you've got two sides, just like on a chessboard, and both sides want to win. So a lot of times it boils down to who's got the best expert. And when you're on the stand, That means, do you connect to the jurors? Do you connect to the judge? And will you withstand all those questions that I just asked as far as credentials, education, work history, publications, presenting, all of that?
Okay,
So
interesting.
I'm sorry, when you're on the stand, does if you're representing the plaintiff, does the defense, like, their goal is to try and discredit you as an expert?
Uh,
So,
well, in a way, they both ask questions. So it's
Mhm.
not unusual for me to be on a stand for 2 or 3 hours
Woo.
nonstop with questions from one side, then the other side cross-examines, then the other side cross-examines, then the other side cross-examines. So you need to be able to present yourself, and then sometimes the judge will ask questions. And in some federal cases, depending on what state you're in, the jury can write questions, hand it to the judge, and those questions are asked of you.
Wow. That's an interesting role that you play in the healthcare industry.
So interesting, and I love it. So it's a great career path for any experienced coder or biller. Not for new coders, because you have to first know how to code and code accurately before you can identify coding that shouldn't be done. So part of assigning a reasonable value is also to look at what's called forensics, which are items that should not be coded, bundled items or items that were unbundled. And to say, well, they charge for all these services in a surgical procedure, for example, and fluoroscopy was one of them, or surgical microscope. But however, this CPT code or DRG, whatever it is that you're using, already includes those procedures, for example. So you wouldn't include that in your reasonable value.
So you say it it's a path or a career path that you've taken. What would be some of those steps along that path? So you said the first one would be you have to be a proficient coder. What would be the next one? If there's coders out there that already have their CPC and they're already in the industry, what would be their next step or the next course of study if they wanted to do similar to what you're doing?
Well, have at least a couple years of experience, because if you're on the stand in front of a judge, that other lawyer that you're not on the side of is going to ask you, well, what work experience? So they're going to try to say, oh, great, you took a test, you passed a test, that's great. But what makes you an expert now because you passed a test? So you have to be able to say, yes, I passed an exam, but the exam was based on that I've had a couple years of coding experience. I was able to successfully pass the exam and now able to work in this industry. So at least a couple of years of experience. It would be helpful if some of our coders presented to either local chapters or to our HealthCon. Also published articles, because that also leads to that you're an expert in an area.
Ability. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, great advice to anybody out there that's listening that's liking what they hear, wanting to kind of get into it. That's seems like a really interesting career path. So
I, Dave, I'm super curious. Jackie, we're kind of taking this, like, we're just so curious about how you landed in this space. There are so many different areas of the revenue cycle that our professionals can land in, and this is a new one to me. I had no idea, so it's super fascinating. When I don't, I'm trying to get a sense of when your husband was in medical school, were you guys married or together then?
No, so I met my husband when he was a resident. And then when he graduated and went to work in Colorado, I met him in Michigan. Then that was when I was asked by him and his partners to help with his practice. After that, then I moved to Tucson and worked, and then to California. How I landed in expert work was when I was in Arizona, I always was asking questions to CMS. And we, like, transition management care codes came out. I'm a co-author with the American Academy of Family Physicians on transition management care with Ken Adler. So I wrote articles. I was always asking CMS more questions about chronic care, Affordable Care Act, that sort of thing. So CMS asked if I would be interested in 2014 to co-present and co-design a webinar with CMS and the Office of the Inspector General on the Affordable Care Act and compliance. This was a national webinar that was available and still available today on the internet, that was live at least twice in 2014 to thousands of providers. Well, fast forward that to about 2016, 2 years later, a lawyer who happens to be now a federal judge in New York had a case, and he needed an expert in healthcare compliance. He saw that webinar on the internet and reached out to me when I was teaching in California. I was teaching health information management. I said yes. I was an expert for my very first case. After that, it's just word of mouth, really, how lawyers find you. Little by little, I got more cases and more cases, to the point now I can just do this. But that's, again, leads to how our members need to be open to presenting and publishing, because that's what makes you an expert.
Absolutely.
Did you have this plan when you and your husband, when he was going through his residency? Was it the plan to bring you in and help with the revenue cycle, or did he
No.
say, I need help? Can you help me through this?
So we were in rural Colorado. He had a couple other partners and then a nurse practitioner, and they were struggling with their office management. So they kind of asked me to be like a practice administrator, which also covered coding and billing, sending out the statements, assisting with all those practice management duties. And so it was that point in about 1994 that I said, sure, I can help out. But I still remember to this day, I said, I don't know anything about coding and billing. So he said, here's a CPT manual, here's an ICD-9 back then. And he kind of explained the differences. And after that, then of course, I knew more about it. And a few years later, started to take the exam, and found the exam actually challenging, because what you learn in real world is so different than correct coding on an exam.
Yep.
Yeah. So were you certified then kind of earlier on? You said it was 94, so you started helping out. Did you get certified still in the 90s?
It was in about probably the late 90s, I would think. I know I got my CPCI around 2007, I believe, right around there. And then I got my CPC probably right around 2006 or something, right around there.
Cool. Yeah. Still been in the industry for a minute. That's awesome. A lot of experience.
That's awesome.
Well,
We do.
Alex, we have with us another guest, it looks like.
Yeah.
Do we want to bring Wendy in? Do you want to
Yeah.
keep everyone together?
Jackie, it's up to you. You're welcome. Our next discussion is a guide to becoming a medical coder. If you have other things, you can leave, or you can stay with us for the other half.
I'm probably going to say goodbye to everyone, because I've got cases waiting for me, so I need to finish.
There we go. I'll have to
So
go
good to
solve
meet
some.
Thank
solve
Well,
some
good luck
issues.
with your cases. Go win.
Yeah.
you. Hey, bye, everyone.
Well, thank you,
Bye, Jackie.
Jacqueline.
You.
See ya. All right, cool. Well, I always want to give people the option if they want to hang out, hang around. Let's bring Wendy in. We have Wendy Cox, and she is joining us. Give her a second to hop in here.
I'm looking at her article right now, and our design team did this whole little video game graphic. I thought it looked so fun.
There she is. Hi, Wendy. How's it going today?
Hey, it's going great. How are y'all doing today?
Good.
So good.
Right.
Well, you are live on Social Hour, as you know, and we're here to talk about your article. But with this, we've got Alex, we have Ellen Hinkle. Do you know Ellen at all?
I do not. No.
No.
Nice to meet you.
Well,
I am
Ellen-
a member of NAB this year and well, for 3 years. So
Okay.
Yeah. So we're just hanging out here. We're talking magazine articles. We just had Jacqueline Bloink on with us talking about medical liens, something that I had never even heard of. So that was interesting, even to read parts of her article about some of the fraud cases of these medical liens that are like in the millions of dollars that, um, unfortunately healthcare
I was
providers are getting
I was
into.
watching on I had AAPC live on my phone and I was listening to her talk and you're trying to keep track of the time, make sure I wasn't late for my time. But I found everything that she said to be very interesting because
yes,
I
Yeah.
didn't know either. Yes.
no.
Yeah. So Wendy, maybe give us a little bit of background on you, and how you got into the industry and got familiar with the AAPC.
Sure. So I actually been in healthcare for 20 years. I worked at a retail pharmacy as a pharmacy technician. I scooped the pills into the bottles, but it was only part-time. And I was looking for a part-time position. I sent my resume into a doctor's office because they were looking for a front desk receptionist. And the fact that I had knowledge of like the different medications and maybe what they treated, I was offered the position. Very fortunate to be offered the position because I had no healthcare experience whatsoever besides working in the retail pharmacy. So I worked front desk, excelled at
Can I
that,
ask which pharmacy?
and Kmart.
Oh, Kmart. Cool. All right.
Yep.
Right on.
And it after about 2 years, our biller that we had there left to take another position. And instead of bringing somebody in to take on her position, they asked if I wanted to move up. And I jumped at the opportunity. It's something I wanted to learn. So I started billing for the facility, internal medicine. We had uh, four physicians at the time, and um, I did their billing. I started doing their accounts receivable, and it just kind of uh, took off from there, I guess, where I went through one organization and got my coding certification. It's not an organization that is very well known. It's kind of localized to like Texas. And I realized that that really wasn't going to do me any good anywhere else unless I was in Texas. So um, I started working, I left the physician office. I started working for a hospital doing accounts receivable. I was, I got fortunate to get a position as a charge master. And that's whenever I started pursuing my coding certifications through AAPC. And it's kind of been, I got my first coding certification in 2013. It was the CPCH at the time.
Mhm.
And I, where did I go from there? 2013, I got my coding certification and I got my first job as a coder in 2014. I have coded same day surgeries, ED, outpatient, and now I am a cardiac cath and interventional radiology coder for organization out of, well, Wisconsin, Illinois, and a couple other states.
Awesome.
Cardiology
And
stuff.
And one of the hard ones.
every
That's where
single
everybody
day.
gets tripped up. Even in our courses, that's where
Yeah.
we lose so many people. Well, I shouldn't say we lose so many people, but that chapter 8, that cardiology part, we lose a lot. So
Some days
That's
it makes me wonder if coding is really if I'm any good at it because some days it is hard.
yeah.
But
So
I enjoy it.
your article is entitled A Guide to Becoming a Medical Coder, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's like the basis. Do you want to give us a little bit of kind of the brief steps for somebody who maybe hasn't read it yet or seen it? Do you want to kind of tell us what
Sure.
things you touch on as far as this guide?
Well, so I want to, I guess, background as to why I was following I follow AAPC on Facebook and you see a lot of people who are newly credentialed and who are very frustrated because they cannot find coding opportunities. I also am currently enrolled at a university pursuing my bachelor's degree in healthcare or health information administration. And at the university, I was tutoring part-time. And a lot of coding students would reach out to tutors because they needed help navigating the code books. And in having conversations with the students, they no idea how to even get started in the field. Besides, graduating school, what am I going to do then? What do I do then? So I wanted to share my story as far as how my path to becoming a medical coder, in hopes that it would help one person. And I think one of the things that people struggle with is the fact that they get certified and they start applying for positions and they get discouraged because they don't. And I heard Jacqueline make the comment about having that coding experience in the area that she's in the field. And even with coding, it can be discouraging because you have some organizations that want the experience, some that don't want the experience. But with my article, my hope was I could guide them, maybe somebody who didn't understand what they needed to do to get their foot in the door, was to get your foot in the door in the medical field, somewhere where you're dealing with patient information, medical records, billing, anything that could get you in the revenue cycle, so that you would become more familiar with the whole process from start to finish. Because as a coder, you don't really get that big picture unless you've actually been through and have kind of a better understanding what happens from start to finish, right? From the time we walk in to the healthcare office to the time we get that bill, whenever have already received services. So one of the things, I guess, if you ask me, the steps to becoming a coder, pursue your certification, the education through AAPC. My certifications, I have taken the whole course through AAPC, not just gotten the certification exam guide or study guide. I've actually went through the course so that I could get a better understanding of what am I coding? What am I doing? The exam guide tests you on, things that we know, but we have to understand the concepts, right? That go with coding, the guidelines. And so one of the things I recommend, to people, you go through the certification course, take the exam, and get your foot in the door in the medical field, whether it just be your medical records or front desk. Get familiar with those things. And a lot of places have those opportunities where you can move up and learn other areas within the organization.
Yeah. I noticed that you have a part that talks about starting in revenue cycle adjacent roles, right? So maybe it's not
Yes,
the dream role that you want or whatever,
right.
but starting in similar roles that at least get you exposure to everything that's going
Yes,
on behind the scenes.
yes,
Yeah, I
That is
could see
not
that being really
uncommon,
crucial.
right? That's not uncommon in any industry. Like some call it internships. A lawyer has to have, or a doctor has residency. Like every
yes,
field,
yes.
even myself, I had an internship putting
Mhm.
you in the mix. It wasn't the job of my dreams, but you have to, or you should consider doing that. Also, Wendy, you talked about, that whole education process. If I were a prospective coder hoping to have this career, I would be attending my local chapter meetings. I would be connecting with every coder in my area. I'd find them on LinkedIn and network like crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then looking for
Yes,
those
yes.
jobs that are like receptionist jobs or whatever, because it's almost like, hey, take what you can get to get you kind of started down that path. Maybe
Right.
not even in the same office or whatever, but I think a lot of people shut down a lot of opportunities just because it's not exactly what they're looking for.
Right,
Well,
right.
you get your foot in the door and you prove yourself, like in Wendy's circumstance. You
Mhm.
worked in the office and were doing, I'm sure, a phenomenal job. So when they needed somebody to take on a role that's important to their revenue, they want somebody that's reliable, that they can trust is going to do a good job. They have somebody in the office that they know can do that. It's the
Yes,
logical
yep.
choice to move somebody they're familiar with and have that trust in to take that kind of
Mhm.
role.
And I personally, I pride myself into knowing that I went through all those steps to get to where I'm at now because it makes me better at my job. It
Absolutely.
makes me a better coder. It makes me a better employee because I understand how my job uh, um how coding makes the things go round. It's how why my job is important to the organization. I'm not just assigning codes and pushing them out the door. I'm making sure that things are not unbundled because I don't want my mom going to the ED and being charged for things that she didn't receive. I like they say, how would you want to treat your or have your mother treated that way or your grandmother treated that way? As a coder, I feel like it's my responsibility, to make sure the organization is in compliance, and two, to make sure that my family or friends or fellow coders out there are being um, charged or coded the services that are provided to them, and the diagnoses too, because we don't want to give a patient a diagnosis that they don't have.
Yeah.
Funny little story I want to share. When I first got into billing, um, I I coded. Our physicians did the rounds at the hospital. They would bring back the face sheets. They would write the diagnosis, and we'd code them, put them in the computer. I got we got a letter from the CDC because they wanted more information on a particular patient. Well, I had coded it wrong. And I had given the patient a diagnosis that ultimately, my physician said ultimately would have put them in a bubble. So, those trial and errors, I think they've also have made me a better coder. And I think it's important for people to get their foot in the door to understand why, you know, being a good coder and making sure that we're coding CPT and our diagnosis codes accurately is important all the way around.
Yeah, you learn a few things when the CDC is
Oh,
reaching out to you, right? And you're like, oh, did I do something wrong?
yeah, we almost had an epidemic back in 2015.
Really?
So,
Was that
no,
was that
2005. It was
what you
2005.
had coded or what you had put on it? What was the diagnosis? Can you tell us?
I don't remember,
Oh, okay.
honestly.
It was just something that was like some maybe highly contagious something or other that they were concerned.
Yes,
Okay. Wow.
yes, yes. And I had to fix it, and I was embarrassed. And like I don't remember the diagnosis, but I remember the response from the physician. So, and it's something that I have, like I said, the importance of going through the whole motions, becoming a coder, so you get an understanding of, the how A affects B and so on.
Yep.
So
And then you can end up being an expert like Jacqueline was talking about, right? Because you
yes,
have experience not only in your lane, but in all the different moving
yes,
parts, right? To
yes.
be able to see kind of the full picture accurately.
I hope so one day. Yep.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I guess that's the goal, right? Because and everything's
Hmm.
changing all the time too, every year,
Yes,
every minute. So
yes.
yeah, that's That's crazy. What a good experience, though. I like that story. Thanks for sharing.
You know, it's not impossible to land your first job shortly after credential. We do see that. You just don't hear it. We often hear about the stories of those who've been struggling a long time, and I get that. I know how frustrating that can be. But if you go to our YouTube channel, to the AAPC playlist, I mean, I can just tell you, I mean, I've spoken with these people. Paul Donna, he showed up at HealthCon last year without a job. He was newly credentialed, and we have stayed in touch. And a few months after HealthCon, he did land his first job, and I'm excited to catch up with him again and hear about that path. But there's so many people, Maddie Doubtree, Abby Duncan. There's so many people who I know felt that frustration, but they have great tips. If you watch some of those interviews, you'll probably kind of get a feel of their approach to finding that first position. So be open to exploring those avenues.
And
Well,
don't give
and
up.
I tell people also that organizations are different, right? The physicians' offices, organizations are different. Some want a seasoned coder because they don't have the training resources to put into somebody who is freshly certified. But then you have organizations who have the resources and they want a newly certified coder so that they can mold that coder into it. So they don't have the guidelines from 10 years ago stuck in their head. They're fresh, and they have current guidelines, um and then they can kind of, if internal guidelines, they can mold that coders instead of having somebody who's maybe stuck in ways, because we get stuck in our ways. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that had changed because so many things are changing, right? So it does depend. And that's one of the things I do try to tell people: don't get frustrated in the process, because you don't know what the organizations are looking for.
Yep.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. They could be looking for somebody, like you said, they could mold, or somebody with experience that can just hit the ground running. Yeah, it really, and some of the comments in the chat, even Tiffany Nicole Taylor says the right attitude also makes a world of difference
Yes,
to an
yes.
employer, right? Just having the right attitude, that maybe you don't have all the experience or aren't exactly what they're looking for, but if you can prove that you're a go-getter and you're willing to learn and all
Yes.
that, I mean,
Yep.
yeah, it's huge.
Absolutely.
Bev Stover says foot in the door is sometimes the only way to get in. Got to keep the faith.
Mhm.
Other coder or other comments about that, about just getting your foot in the door. So
Dave, you
And being
mentioned,
open-minded and willing to learn. Sorry, Alex.
that's right, go
But
ahead.
just being open-minded and willing to learn and take direction, because in coding, because everything is changing, sometimes we do have to take we may have to get corrected, and see that as a learning experience and not something negative.
Right.
as a personal attack or that's
Yep.
hard. That's hard. We all like to be right, Especially when we really think that we're
Yes.
right, and then we're
Yes.
shown that maybe we're not right.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
hard to
I
swallow.
get my
Alex.
feelings hurt sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Make it all a learning experience just
Yes.
to get you
Yes.
closer to that path you want to be on.
And it's hard in the
That's
moment,
right.
especially when you're trying to prove yourself. You're trying to, maybe you're speaking to a physician who maybe you feel a little bit, what's the word, intimidated by.
Yes.
There's a lot of
Yes.
different things that could play into those interactions. But yeah, not taking it personally and just trying to
Yep. Yes.
turn it into a learning
Yes.
experience for yourself. Yeah.
Yes.
Were you going to say something, Alex? I
Well,
think I'm
this discussion is actually hot right now in the Facebook group. Wendy may have seen, there's some comments today that I was looking in there, and they're always very well engaged. A lot of people helping, a lot of people expressing similar frustrations. And
Mhm.
I get it. Just Dave, you pointed out some of those, reasons why, and you spend a lot of money, and you're like, I really want this career to happen, but don't give up. I mean, I've had members reach out to me, and sometimes just a little pep talk will do the trick. And the Facebook group, honestly, it's amazing in so many ways, but sometimes you don't get the lift that you need. And so find a mentor that you can
Mhm.
rely on,
Yes.
who can help lift you and take you in the direction that you want to go.
And I think it's
Yes.
important to recognize too, this is not unique to AAPC. Any person who is newly, newly credentialed, has a new degree. Eons ago, I graduated from college with an elementary ed degree and could not find a job because, they wanted experience and there weren't a whole lot of jobs. So, it's everybody faces that challenge. So you just have to be persistent and don't give up on yourself, and know that you studied to do something you will love, and you just got to hold out for that job, and you'll get there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at another comment here in the Facebook chat. Along the lines of what Alex was saying about this being kind of a hot issue right now. The Lori Jaramila says she has to sometimes remove, and I guess Lori's one of our admins on our Facebook.
She
Or
has her other
Facebook.
groups.
Yeah, sometimes other groups. I have to sometimes remove that. I don't know who you have designated to have that power, Alex. But she says I have to remove their negative posts. I call it saving them from themselves, as there are many employers in the coding groups. So if you're in some of these coding groups or whatever, and if you're overly negative, or if you're, I don't know, I mean, you got to always know the image or whatever that you're giving off or portraying. Even if you're in a group of coders and you think you're just frustrated or just venting, asking for help, there could be employers out there. Yeah, I didn't really think of that.
I think you could share the reality of how difficult it can be, but also be positive and encouraging and help guide people down a path that could lead to employment.
Absolutely. That's great to know that there's employers out on those sites too, because that's a great way for members to be positive and be promoting themselves, and maybe that employer will see them on there and
Mm-hmm.
want to
Exactly.
meet that person.
Or you're one of those people that's helping somebody else out, kind of navigate those things or try and bolster them, or like Wendy, giving your experience, and hey, I was in this position and these are the things that I did. And sure, it was a harder route than maybe a lot of people take. But you went through all those difficult points to get to where you're at. And speaking of, what's next for you? What's next for Wendy?
Um, so I mean, in my personal life, I just had a 21-year-old who moved out. So
Right.
right now, I am in.
Nester.
I'm enjoying my quiet time and working and not having any additional expectations. Besides I can clock in, I can clock out, and I can go sit down um and just enjoy the not being in a rush all the time.
I love
So,
that.
but honestly though, one day I would really like to get into education. I would really like to um, become an instructor, even if it was just like part time. That is my goal one day.
Hmm.
Awesome.
Well, you're talking to people who can definitely put in a good word and make that happen. So lots
Thank
of
you.
lots of opportunities to be instructors.
Yep,
We love good
yep,
instructors, and you'd be awesome. So
yeah,
Got that skill set, wanting to help and mentor others. So just,
yes, yes,
your
and
article.
sometimes we don't need a big what's next or a big next credential to go for. We can just be content, kind of enjoy where we're at, um,
yes.
just really settle into things. I think that's wise too. So I love that that's kind of the vibe that it sounds like you're taking. So
Well, and I'll tell you real quick. I mean, I've been a single parent, so my coding certification, part of it has been financially motivated. But I love my job. So that's why, right now I'm taking that break. I'm taking a pause. I'm content where I'm at, and who knows how that I don't know how long that's going to be, but right now I am content where I'm at.
Nice. That's a good space to be in. Love that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, cool. This has been a really good social hour. We've covered a lot of things. Like to thank Ellen Hinkle for joining us for the social hour and being with us. We're gonna see Ellen at HealthCon. Wendy, is HealthCon on your radar or not? This
Probably not.
probably not.
They said I have to work.
Oh man. Well, one of these times you can convince him to get him to send you out there on
I
their
hope
dime.
so.
HealthCon helps you work better, even better than
Yes,
you're already doing, because you learn more things that you can bring back to improve even more than you already have. So
yes. I hope so one day. Yep.
So, well, we hope so too. So, thank you again for joining us, everyone. Ellen, Wendy Cox, and as always, Alex. It's been fun. So, thanks
See
all.
everybody in
Thank
Orlando.
y'all.
Thanks, Wendy.
bye bye.